So let's sit up nice and tall and close the eyes. Take a nice breath in and a nice breath out. Take another breath in and another breath out. And just feel that you are arriving in this moment. Feel that your body is settling in to your seat, to your posture, to your intention. Feel that the mind is quieting down and that you are becoming accessible. Accessible to energy of the divine feminine, accessible to the energy of the universe, accessible to love and compassion. I'll begin our session with a short chant to the various forms of the Mother. Om Shri Adi Shaktiye Namaha. Om Shri Durgaye Namaha. Om Shri Saraswatiye Namaha. Om Shri Lakshmiye Namaha. Om Shri Kalikaye Namaha. Om Shri Taraye Namaha. Om Shri Tripura Sundariye Namaha. Om Shri Bhairaviye Namaha. Om Shri, Om Shri, Om Shri. I'm taking a moment to set an intention for yourself for our session today. Perhaps some of you are already on the path of enlightenment and you have been studying the divine feminine for some time. And perhaps some of you are newer or simply curious about what this all entails. No matter where you are in your inquiry, set an intention for an open heart and an open mind, that perhaps there'll be some inspiration here for you today. Bless you. And then drawing the hands together in front of the heart, together we'll chant one beautiful Om. Take a nice breath in. Bowing the head toward the heart, acknowledging unity, oneness, and peace. And draw the face back to center. Welcome and namaste. Good to see you all today. Good to see you. So, my name is Sudha, and I am the co-founder, together with my husband Ed, of the Kula Kamala Foundation and Yoga Ashram. And we are a nonprofit organization that focuses in yoga and yoga therapy. And we focus our teachings in an exquisite balance between the divine feminine and the divine masculine. Understanding that we exist as people in a world of opposites, and if we wish truly to experience a balanced life, then we must learn how to coexist with our preferences within those opposites in a way that makes beautiful sense in the world, and in a way that allows us to empower our compassionate heart. So my thought in coming here today is that we face a unique time in the world right now where more and more people are stepping onto the path of spirituality. And it seems that more and more people are stepping onto the path without teachers, without guidance, without a deep understanding of how to achieve what it is that they're looking for, even the first steps to take. There's a curiosity or an inquiry. There must be something. There must be something bigger, something more inclusive, something more peaceful. And so perhaps we read a book, perhaps we're inspired by the words of that book, but there's still a gap that remains. And so for my being here today is to hopefully inspire you about where you might look to acquire some of those answers. How you might either begin or continue to walk your path, either with a teacher or without one, in a way that makes beautiful sense to you and to your intentions in this life. So I'll start by explaining that I use the terms feminine and masculine, and that they do not mean man and woman. They do not mean the sexual identification, the biological aspect of an individual, and they don't generally mean a gender aspect either. They are simply qualities or essences that we all carry in our bodies at all times, in our minds and in our hearts. It just so happens that Shiva, who is the god, the masculine aspect of stillness, manifested as a man. And so in our human minds, we look at things like logic, squares, discipline, and certain types of harshness and strength as being something that men embody first and predominantly, versus women who have a tendency to manifest softness, compassion, nurturance, creativity, and a different type of flow, a creative flow that has fewer boundaries. So women tend to manifest those types of qualities first, but all qualities are within all of us, depending upon what it is that we're doing. So for example, your checkbook. Do you approach your checkbook in a masculine manner where it's down to the penny, everything is logically lined up, or more in a feminine manner where you might wait until next month to see if it actually balances out or not? Yeah? Okay. So what is the divine feminine? Well, it is a formlessness. It is formlessness. It's been called universal consciousness. It's been called power. And actually that is the translation of the word Shakti. The word Shakti means power. It doesn't mean to acquire power. It means that which already is power. That which is the essence of power, the point of origination of power, and that which offers power out to everything else. So Shakti is the formless aspect of the divine feminine, and Shakti is power. So nothing that is powerful can exist without Shakti. So I'll give you an example. This light bulb. The light emanating from that light bulb is Shakti. The energy that went into creating the light is Shakti. The energy of the idea that went into the creation and design, into the creation actually manifested, into the emanation of light is Shakti. If Shakti were absent in any one of those steps, that light could not exist. So Shakti is the essence of the divine feminine in the purest form. And a Shakta is an individual who is studying or devoted to the divine feminine, studying or devoted to understanding power, understanding energy, understanding qualities, and how all qualities play a part in all of our lives. Understanding both reality and non-reality. So bear with me for a moment. So the divine feminine is power, and she is the power that creates our universe and our impressions of that universe. She is the essence of what is real, and she is the essence of what is not real, because what is not real cannot manifest without her. So she is both the cause of our confusion and the solution to it. Yeah, sounds like a lot, doesn't it? A little bit, yeah. So an individual who is a Shakta is a person who is looking to make sense of that statement. A person who is looking at their life and at their experience of this life and saying, what is out of balance? How do I bring it back to balance? How do I invoke the power within myself, which is the same power as the universe and the consciousness that flows through all things? How do I bring that forward in my day-to-day experience of being alive in a way that empowers me to be a kinder person, a gentler person, a more integrated being, to support my community? And so in this regard, the first goal of a Shakta is lifestyle. It is living a life of balance and understanding what that actually means. taking the time to investigate, to self-study, to take a look at our own behaviors, our own actions, and to decide which ones are healthy and which ones are not so healthy. And then without critical judgment, changing what needs to change and keeping what supports us. The second goal of a Shakta who goes a little bit deeper into the study of the Divine Feminine is what's called the Siddhis. S-I-D-D-H-I, Siddhi. A Siddhi translates to a perfection. Not perfection the way that our minds think of it. It's perfection as in awareness of things. Awareness and sometimes what might appear to be psychic abilities. To know the past and to see the future. To read minds. To understand the basis of truth. To move things at will. To make things very large, to make things very small, including oneself. And it all sounds very esoteric. But the reality is, you do it every day anyway. You just don't know you're doing it. When you walk into a room and you try to hide yourself. When you walk into a room and you try to make sure that you're the first one who's seen. Only when you're studying the Shakti, what you're utilizing those practices for is your own upliftedness and the upliftedness of all other beings everywhere. And somewhere along the line, interesting things will start to happen. You will begin to read waves of energy. You will begin to see when things haven't quite happened yet, but you'll understand that they are going to. Your mind will open on another level, and you will become aware of many, many aspects of energetics. You'll be able to read people. But here's the pitfall, and this is written in many of the scriptures of yoga. The pitfall of the Siddhis is that we get stuck there, that we begin to read energy of other people, energy of ourselves, energetics of things that are happening around us, and we become overwhelmed. And in that overwhelmedness, we misunderstand that to be a special sensitivity, when what it actually is an indication that we're not paying attention in a healthy way. If we're becoming overwhelmed by being available, accessible, and aware in our world, then we are not using that gift, that perfection, in a way that uplifts. Instead, we're actually using it in a way that harms, makes us a little sick on the inside, a little uncomfortable on the inside, a little impatient with ourselves and with other people, with the processes of the world. The other pitfall of the Siddhis is that we get caught in the psychic manifestation of things. We think that simply because we can read someone's mind, that should be good enough, because that's pretty amazing, don't you think? But the reality is that reading a mind is not such a big deal. What is a big deal in the Shakta lineage is to be with the universe, is to be with the universe, is to not get caught up in the thoughts of other people, not to get caught up in the actions of other people, but to be with the pure conscious nature of the universe in a way that allows us to celebrate day in and day out all that ever was and all that ever will be. So the second goal of a Shakta would be the acquisition of Siddhis. And even if it's not a straightforward goal, it's something that happens along the way anyway. In some interesting way, it's how you know you're making progress. Yeah. But the third goal and the ultimate goal is liberation. The third goal and the ultimate goal of a Shakta, one who studies and adores the Divine Feminine, is liberation. Liberation of oneself out of the state of suffering, and liberation of all beings everywhere out of the state of suffering. Because until all beings everywhere are liberated, our work is not done. We need to keep serving the community, serving ourselves, serving the healing energy of the world, protecting the earth, protecting the other beings that exist on the earth, until all beings have been alleviated of their suffering. So how does Shakti manifest if Shakti is something formless? Because probably everybody in this room has seen a picture of the goddess. She has many, many manifestations. And she manifests in different ways for different people at different times, depending upon the temperament of that person, depending upon what's needed on their spiritual path. And it is said that her first manifestation was as the goddess Durga. Durga manifested at least twice. The first time she manifested was because there was a great flood that was put into place by a demon named Durgama. And she was asked by the leaders of the world to put a stop to this flood so that the beings of the world would not suffer any longer because of it. And so she did. Shortly thereafter, there was a boon that had been given to an individual who was named Mahishasura. He had been adoring Brahma, one of the three major deities in Hinduism, and he had been praying to him for many thousands of years. And he finally one day went up and said to him, "You know, I've been a very good devotee of yours. I think you should give me a gift." And Brahma likes to give gifts. So he said, okay. So he gave him the gift that he could not be killed by any man or any god. As soon as he received this boon, he began to wreak havoc on the world, began to pillage and exploit, began to cause all types of suffering. The gods didn't know what to do. The kings didn't know what to do, because none of them could do anything to this being, because one of the boons was no man and no god could kill him, could harm him in any way. So they went to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and those are the three aspects. They are the creation, the maintenance, and the destruction. They went to them and they said, "What do we do? How do we fix this? You've got to be able to do something. I mean, you're the gods, you know." And they all looked at Shiva because he tended to have the answers. And Shiva said, "Let's stand in a circle and let's create a great fire. And we will make an offering of our greatest skills into that fire." And so they did. And each one put the bow and arrow, one put the sword, one put the mace, one put clarity, another put courage, another put purity. One by one, they offered the very best of themselves into this fire. And when they were just about done, the fire grew very great and very tall, very bright. And from the fire came forth a lion. And riding on top of the lion was the most beautiful, radiant being that had ever been. She was dressed in a bright red sari, lined in gold. She had long, thick, dark hair and large, dark eyes. She was very peaceful. She had those half Buddha eyes. As the lion stepped out of the fire, she looked around. She said, "Why have you called me? What can I do for you?" She didn't say, "Why have you created me?" She said, "Why have you called me?" And they explained to her the situation and asked her to take care of it. And she said, "Well, you're my children. Of course I'll take care of you." So she went to a nearby hilltop and she took on the persona of a milkmaid or a cowherd girl or a farm girl. She just took on the persona of a very simple being, still quite radiant in her being. And one of the attendants of this demon saw her and absolutely became enamored. Went back to Mahishasura and said, "You have all the kingdoms in the world, all the wealth in the world, and you have many beautiful wives, but you don't have the most beautiful wife because she's standing on a hillside tending to the cows." So Mahish said to him, "Go get her. Go tell her she needs to come right now and become my wife so that my collection of absolute amazing and beautiful things will be complete. And if she doesn't listen to you, then bring her here anyway." So the attendant goes over and approaches Durga and says to her, "My master would love for you to wed him, to become his wife." And she said, "I can't do that." Nope. And the attendant said, "That's not the right answer." She said, well, you know, silly me, I don't mean any disrespect by this, but as a child, I took an oath. And that oath stated that I would only marry the man who could defeat me in battle. So please go get your master and tell him, I would be most honored to be his wife, but it can only happen if he has defeated me in battle. So the attendant goes back and reports this. And of course, Mahish gets very upset about this. And he sends 2 of his, we'll call them generals, Madhu and Kaitab. Madhu means sweet. Kaitab means bitter. So Mahish sends sweetness and bitterness to Durga to try to confuse her mind and make her drop her vow by causing her to become confused by the preferences that most humans experience, because he doesn't realize that she is the Adi Shakti, that she is the Divine Mother. So she battles them, she puts them in their place, annihilates them, overcomes, because they are nothing without her. All she has to do is withdraw the energy, withdraw the power, and they mean nothing. And the attendant who sees this entire thing goes back and reports to his master, says, with a fell swoop of her sword, they were gone. What should I do now? Master becomes very irate and sends the next demon. So at this point, he sends Dhumra Lochana. Dhumra means smoke, and Lochana means in the eyes. He sends the demon who puts smoke in your eyes. And he does this with the hopes of confusing her, yet again, so that maybe she won't be able to see clearly. She will lack clarity, and without clarity will give in and go become his wife. Is that what happened? No. In one fell swoop of the mace, she did him in. The attendant, witnessing this, goes back and says, I don't know, you're running kind of low on demons here. This one isn't working either. So he said, we'll send Chandra and Munda. Chandra and Munda will do her in for sure. Chandra is pride. Munda is shame. Let her become so prideful that she wants me as her husband because I'm the all-powerful. And if the pride doesn't work, then let her become so shamed that she dishonored me in such a way that she crawls to me on her hands and knees. Sending Chanda and Munda, they go, they meet her, she does them in. Fell swoop, moment or two, it's done. The attendant's now shaking in his boots. He's like, I really don't want to go home and tell him this. But he goes back. He says, I don't know what you can send. I don't know what will do what you want to be done. She said, you have to come. You have to go. She needs to battle you, and you need to beat her in battle in order for her to marry you. You need to be the one who is victorious, not any of these other ones that you are sending. He says, well, we'll send Rakta Bija and see how she performs there. So imagine this. Rakta Bija is a demon who is huge, think Godzilla size, and he's bloodthirsty. And he has a gift. The gift is that for every drop of blood that falls on the ground that is shed in battle, 10,000 more of him emerge. That's a pretty big obstacle. So he shows up, and Durga begins to battle. And she goes to cut his head off. But the wound that was made dropped blood on the ground, and 10,000 more of him emerged. So she thought for a moment and said, well, how will I address this? What should I do? So through her third eye center, she calls forth another form of herself, which is Kali. How many of you have heard of Kali? Yeah. The goddess of destruction. The goddess of the night. The goddess who is very black with bright white eyes, fangs that are dripping with blood. She's a little scary. She's completely naked, except for a garland of severed heads and a skirt of severed arms and legs. She has a very long, lolling tongue. She comes forth from the third eye of Durga, ready to battle. Raktabija sees her. Durga comes in with the sword, cuts the head off. Kali opens her mouth entirely and consumes all of Raktabija, every drop of blood. And he's done. Not understanding this, the attendant goes back and he says, she even defeated Raktabija, one of your greatest demons. There's really nothing left. I think you should give up. Oh, he was angry. And he said, I will never give up. Never. So he himself, with his brother Nishumba, came. Now, Mahishasura in some stories is also called Shumba. And in some stories, they're two separate beings. But he has a brother called Nishumba. And together they represent ego and attachment. And so they go to her, hoping to call to her ego, trying to lull her with gems and wealth and popularity and all these things. And Nishumba goes first. She kills Nishumba, puts him under her foot, and he is done. So the attachment is finished. Becoming so irate at seeing that his brother attachment has been annihilated, Shumba jumps forth to face her. And a great battle ensues that lasts for thousands of years. They do a cosmic dance, back and forth, back and forth. And then finally a moment comes, and Durga decides that's enough, and she ends him. And at the end of that battle, the sacred scriptures called the Vedas are restored because they were being held hostage, which means that goodness was restored, balance was restored. The ethic of good living was restored. The spirit and the soul were restored. And Durga went back to the party that summoned her and said, the work is done now. Call me when you need me. And she disappeared. What does this story have to do with Shaktism? With the process of awakening oneself to the Divine Mother? Well, it tells you the path you need to take to get there. Every single one of these demons that are represented in this story reflect a step on the path of the first goal of Shakta, lifestyle. We need to overcome our preferences, not let them drive us. It's okay to like chocolate. I love chocolate. But the question is, does it make your life an unfunctional place? Does it inhibit you from practicing your spirituality? Does it keep you off of your yoga mat or out of your church or temple? Does it keep you away from your prayer, away from your service to your community? So the first step is that we must annihilate these things, put them under our control, which is not so easy, not easy at all. And the mother recognizes this. So she says, well, you know, the main problem is ignorance. And Mahishasura is the essence of ignorance. Mahishasura is the essence of those things that keep our minds so clouded, keep us caught up in our preferences, keep us caught up in our emotions, that it is ignorance actually that must become annihilated eventually. And Kali shares with us the wisdom that it's not enough to do this a little bit at a time. That if we wish to truly take hold of our lives and live the spiritual life that we have been called to live, awake, aware, and present to every moment, then we must consume our desires completely and end them, which is what she did to Raktabija. Raktabij's blood and the 10,000 things that emerged as a result of it dropping on the ground is representative of your desires. For those of you who are ex-smokers and you had quit, you know what happened. You started to eat, snack, you started to look at other things to replace the cigarettes, possibly a few other things, not just one. So for every desire that we put down, the tendency is that 10 more crop up. Yeah, absolutely. So Durga says, end it. It is your choice. While there are some things in this universe that are destined, like the beginning of the universe, the maintenance of the universe, and the eventual end of the universe, the things that are not destined are the things that you have free choice over. And in Shakta, the mother, her teachings say, open your eyes, open your heart, live a life of love and devotion, be of service to your community, and you'll be fulfilled. Become centered in yourself, concerned only with pride, shame, ego, preferences, and you'll live a life of suffering, not a life of goodness. And being so caught up in suffering will hinder the ability to cultivate a relationship with the mother. So it's not enough that we use words like creativity. They're beautiful words. Creativity, love, compassion, faith, joy, happiness. We must actually be active in that relationship. Practicing self-study. Looking at the things that stop us from experiencing compassion. Looking at our own self-tendencies that inhibit our creativity. And she gives us the answer of how to do that. If you read the scriptures of the mother, and as I said, she has many, many forms, thousands of forms that she comes. But all the writings say the same thing. That the surest way to open up the gates is to be devotional, is to pay attention on purpose, is to serve fully, and to surrender completely. The word surrender can be a little bit of a hot button in our society because we're very prideful. Say, I don't want to surrender. I've worked too hard to feel empowered. If you were truly empowered, you would not be afraid of surrender. You would see surrender as part of empowerment. You would see that to give everything you have is to have absolute faith in the abundance of the mother and in the love of the mother. So I'm going to talk for a moment about Tara. Tara is oftentimes considered the second goddess to emanate from Durga's third eye. There is a Tara in Buddhist darshan or Buddhist wisdom as well, but this is not the same one. This Tara looks very much like Kali. She might be a little scary. She's smeared in blood and ashes. She is usually depicted naked, and she's very fierce. She's very fierce in her clarity. She's not fierce in her clarity in that she will look at someone else and say, "What is wrong with you?" She's fierce in her clarity about her own footsteps, about she herself, what she must do, how she must carry herself, how she must accept or not what comes across her path, how she must interact with it, how she must evolve herself. She's very clear. And so if a distraction comes along the way to try to move her in an opposite direction, she says, that doesn't serve me right now, but thank you for offering. Never losing her compassion. During this great war, there was a moment in time where the demons and the gods got together and saw that they had caused so much destruction on the earth already that they decided to have a little bit of a ceasefire and to churn the ocean in the hopes of acquiring a very sacred essence that was believed to be hidden in the very depths of the ocean. So together they began to churn the ocean, creating a very great whirlpool. A few thousand years of doing this, and something came to the top. What came to the top was a very special poison called hala hala, a poison that would annihilate every living being on the earth. Shiva saw this and jumped forward and skimmed the surface of the ocean and drank the poison, the hala hala, and held it in his throat. The poison turned his head blue. Having seen this, Tara had great compassion for Shiva's act of selflessness and decided to transform him into an infant, put her at his breast, and allow him to drink the mother's milk, which neutralized the poison and ended the threat to both Shiva and the world of living beings. For those of us on the Shakta path, this is a very important lesson, because what it emphasizes is the necessity of selfless action. That we are here not only to receive, but to serve. And when we feel that we are not receiving enough, it is because we're not serving enough. And that if we serve to the extent that we are willing to give all of ourself, potentially even our life, then the mother will intercede and she will take care of us. One of the names of the mother is Shri. Shri means abundance, absolute abundance, as in there is no such thing as lack. The only reason why we as human beings feel that there is a lack in the universe is because our mind is clouded. Our mind is confused. Our mind is still working at that first level within that first goal of trying to neutralize the preferences and the power that they have over us. And I think that if I asked you, probably every person in the room would say, I prefer to feel like I'm receiving something that's going to make my life a good place, something that's going to make me happy, something that's going to fulfill my purpose in this life. Not so many of us would realize that the only way to truly achieve that is by being of service. Service doesn't have to be extraordinary. You don't have to swallow the poison off the surface of the ocean. It's just not necessary. Shiva did it already, so we can thank him for that. Your service could be as much as holding a door open. It could be as much as being kind to someone who you would not normally be kind to. It could be as much as understanding that your neighbor who might be infirm for some reason could use a little support and maybe drop a meal off to them. Ask them what they need. Your kindness, your service could be to forgive the person you've been carrying a grudge against for the last 5 years. Let them off the hook. Let them be free of you and your condemnation of them. These are great services to commit to people. Other services could be to take care of your environment. Don't leave trash behind. You are literally trashing the earth when you do. And the earth is the body of the mother. Another beautiful goddess, Bhairavi. It is said that her body is the body of the universe, and that when we walk upon the earth, we walk upon her. Now imagine when you walk angry, how you place your feet onto the ground. Would you walk across someone you love that way? No. You would walk with compassion and peace in your heart. You would walk with the intention of healing, with the intention of experiencing an intimate closeness, a peacefulness on the inside. So the goddess lays it out for us in all her forms. She tells us every step of the way. And the most amazing thing is that these teachings, some of them are relatively recent, maybe 300 AD to 1200 AD. But the bulk of these teachings are thousands of years old. Thousands of years. So what does that tell us? It tells us that people thousands of years old, great teachers, saints and sages, understood the human dilemma of suffering. They understood what causes it. They left us a roadmap to follow. And we're still working at it. Which is okay. Because the other side of this beautiful coin is that all diversity comes from power, and all power comes from the mother. And therefore, while there is a part of our heart and soul that is longing for the goodness of the universe, longing for the balance, longing for the awakening, anything that happens on our path, even if it's to the contrary of those things, is part of our path. There's a story of a monk. He was a tantric, a priest actually. And the other priests in the area thought that he was using things that were not appropriate in his ceremonies, such as wine and meat. So they would spy on him. And they couldn't quite see, so through the window, or because everything was fairly obscured, smoke would occur. The clear glass would suddenly become unclear, and they couldn't see through it. So one day they decided that they were just simply going to walk into the temple, walk up to the altar, and see directly what this priest was doing. So the day came. It was a very important ritual for the mother, the Navratri. And he started his ceremony. And about 10 minutes into it, the door flies open and the local priests all come in. And as they approached the altar, the meat became laddu and the wine became water and milk. And then when they left, it returned to its original state. What this story means is that while we are striving in our life for certain types of spiritual goodness, you probably follow, just the people in this room alone, a diverse number of paths in spirituality. The essence of this story shares with us that we should not think of one path as being more valuable than the other. We should not think of one experience as being more valuable than the other. We should not think of one essence as being more valuable than the other. Because all essences come from one source, and that's the mother. Lakshmi is the goddess of abundance. She is responsible for all forms of abundance. Everything from monetary wealth, to a big house on the hill, to a beautiful sports car, to spiritual awakening, and everything in between. And it is said that to condemn money is to condemn Lakshmi, because that's who it came from. It is not a question of whether money is good or bad. It's a question of how are your preferences causing you to interact with it. To ask yourself that question and to study to provide yourself with the answer is to be on the path of the mother, to be on the path of the divine feminine, to be looking, to be asking questions, and to be accepting the answers as they come. So as we study the goddesses, what we tend to find is that each one carries a particular energy, a particular gift or technique that is very helpful to the spiritual aspirant. So for example, Kali carries transformation and Tara carries compassion. So Kali and Tara are the essence of transformational compassion as a method to healing and feeling, understanding your wholeness. Kali is also time. The word Kala actually means time. Bhuvaneshwari is space, and Chinnamasta is perception. And in this triad, we can see that time, space, and perception are a methodology to healing. How? Well, transformation doesn't necessarily happen overnight unless you're one of those very, very few people throughout the history of time that have had that experience. For most of us, it's a progression. It takes time. It takes investment. It takes patience. It takes space, holding space for yourself and for all other people while you are in this process of self-inquiry and awakening. And then it also requires that you adjust your perception so that there does not come a point in time where you look and say, I'm doing my work, but you're not doing yours. Where you look and see everybody is doing work. Everybody is on the path. Every single person is involved and in some way, shape, or form appropriate to them, invested. When we look at Tara, we see that she also represents sound. She represents supreme sound. She is sound as a healing instrument. And all traditions share this, whether it's prayer or mantra, chanting. In yoga, it's the primordial sound Om that is the utmost healing instrument. So Tara is the goddess that emanates sound. Bhairavi is energy. She's the energy of manifestation. She's the energy of the universe. She is the energy of all things that ever was and ever will be. And Matangi is wisdom. So if we take these three, sound, energy, and wisdom, we find another methodology to healing. That we invest our time, instead of on Facebook or watching soap operas or violent movies, that we invest our time in cultivating sacred sounds within ourselves, so that those sounds wash away the distraction of the senses. So that instead of turning off the mantra and turning on the song that talks about keying your boyfriend's car because he cheated on you. I can never remember who that was. I'm sure somebody knows. Yeah. Just imagine if you listen to that enough, you know? It becomes a reality in your mind. What song was that? Who remembers? Carrie Underwood. Yes, exactly. I love her. She's got such a beautiful voice. Kind of wish she would do mantra. That's okay, you know? When I first heard that song, I turned it off. But it's got a catchy little tune to it, you know? So when I heard it a second time, I listened to the music, got a little caught up in that. Then, I don't know, a few hundred times later, because you know it gets played 1,000 times a day, I find that I went from not even paying attention to the words to subconsciously paying attention to the words. And then adopting the attitude of the words. And then finding that when that song came on, there would be a place inside of me that felt anger. There would be a place inside of me that said, oh yeah, that's exactly it. That right there is empowerment. I'm so thankful for yoga. Because then that other little part of me said, Sudha, stop. It's just a song, and you know that it is a subliminal issue. So get rid of it. Never listen to it again. But how often do we keep listening and keep allowing those types of messages to become our reality? In this particular Tridevi, they're saying acquire wisdom, not ignorance. Use your energy to effectively purify yourself. Not purify as in fundamentalism, but to be of a pure heart, to recognize love and goodness. Yes, there's hate out there. We know. Yes, there are unfortunate things happening in the world. We know. But if you meet violence with violence, you will only have violence. If you meet hate with hate, you will only have hate. If you meet distrust with distrust, you will only have distrust. You cannot build bridges there. It is not possible. So instead, become energized in goodness and let that bring you the wisdom that's necessary for healing in your life. I could go on. There are 1,000 different goddess names, and every one stands alone, and every combination combines to provide us with the utmost gifts and methodologies to come to a spiritual awakening in this life and potentially in this moment. The choice is ours. It's up to us how we wish to see this world, how we wish to be in this world, and how we wish to be together. So I want to have a little bit of discussion with you and invite some questions at this point.
I had no idea there were and is this in the Hindu tradition?
It's in every tradition for the most part that has the concept of a goddess. Even in Christianity, we could look at saints and we could see that there have been many women who have been canonized. In Buddhism or many East Asian traditions, there are many different goddesses in each tradition. In India, in Hinduism, yes, there are many different goddesses. But then we should not lose the vision that there is actually only one, and that one is the Adi Shakti. And she, being all-powerful, has the ability to manifest in many different forms, depending upon what the time calls for and what the person is in need of in a given moment. And we can liken this to ourselves. So you walk into a situation and you might become a lifesaver. You walk into another situation and you might become a lover. You walk into another situation and you might become a warrior. It depends upon the situation that you find yourself in. You will act accordingly. That is the same as the goddess. As we manifest our lives and as our suffering takes hold of us, she manifests within our lives in a way that supports us. And it may not support us immediately. Yeah, it may not be as fast as our ego would like it to be. Sometimes it's a little bit of a longer trek, but she's got the end game. Yeah, so she knows where we'll end up. We don't have to worry about that. Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Wonderful, wonderful. Other thoughts or questions?
It's just so amazing to feel it all. It feels so amazing. Like, I don't know, there's really no actually transcendence in it. It's weird. You were trying to describe it. It's just so amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one of the things that I find very comforting is this concept of not being alone. Oftentimes as spiritualists on paths, and especially in this modern day when so many people are seeking spirituality, but they've left the church, they've left the temple, they don't consider teachers very valuable anymore. And that population is growing. And so the one thing that we're seeing a lot of, and I do a lot of spiritual counseling, and people come in all the time and they're like, I feel so disconnected. I feel on the one hand that I'm being drawn in a certain direction, but I have no idea what it's about. I have no idea how to acquire what I'm looking for. I have no idea. And so when we come into this understanding that we're not alone, that there is a community of like-minded individuals awaiting us to support us, but then even above that the mother, the essence of the mother and the essence of the father, both together are there. And you don't have to look at them as physical beings, because they're not. At least not in the Shakti tradition, not until they manifest themselves, But that it's energy, it's the breath that you breathe in, it's the breath that you breathe out. It's the fact that the tree sprouts from an acorn and grows into this amazing 50-foot tall being, that has leaves and then drops them and then forms new ones. It's the migration of the birds. It's the flow of the stream. It's all of it. And we are, in the Shakti tradition and in the yoga tradition, we are not separate from that. And part of our suffering comes from thinking we are, comes from thinking that when we're walking through something, that we are not part of it, that we're somehow either higher than it or different than it. But we're not. We're part of it. And for myself personally, that alleviates a lot of fear. It alleviates a lot of doubt. and it brings a lot of comfort. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. Yeah. Does somebody else have their hand? Yes.
What is your own interpretation of the relationship, the possible relationship between the Kundalini and Adishakti and the divine feminine, like how Kundalini ties into
Sure. Absolutely. How long do you have? Okay, so for those who do not know or are not aware, Kundalini in yoga is a coiled serpentine energy at the base of the spinal cord, which is dormant. So it is not activated. It is not activated because the other energies in the body that flow through the Ida, which is an energetic channel that guides the feminine energy in the body, and the Pingala, which is the energetic channel that guides the masculine in the body, that they are overwhelmed by the senses and what you could call impure, meaning that they're struggling between preferences, that they are deep in suffering because of the imbalance of the ego. So, as you adopt a spiritual sadhana, as you adopt whether it's yoga or Tai Chi or meditation, which is part of yoga for those who aren't aware, but whatever spiritual sadhana, prayer, chanting, as you perfect that sadhana, as you become more invested in that sadhana, then what happens is those channels become more clear. They become purified, and your preferences and whatever is causing you suffering in the moment becomes less and less and less. For most people, I'm not talking about the special few who have that Kundalini awakening, and I'm talking about your average individual. For your average individual, as they move into a phase in this life where they are more deeply invested in devotion and less invested in selfishness, then that Kundalini becomes aroused. And so we can go back to talking about the cities also there, because then what starts to happen is that purified energy, that pure energy that moves through, which is not tainted by suffering, tainted by preference, it actually nourishes the Kundalini to start to rise. So if you could imagine that this serpent begins to awaken and starts to unwind itself and move up the spinal column, this is the anatomy of yoga, starts to move up the spinal column toward the crown of the head, where she, the Adi Shakti, which is the Kundalini, yes, very much so, that she begins to transform into the Shiva. But then, as this energetics approaches the crown of the head, it manifests into Ardha Narishwara. And that is the masculine and the feminine forever intertwined and absolutely balanced with one another. So you have the Kundalini, which is also the Adi Shakti, sleeping within the body. But this is your spiritual potency. This is not, it is the energy of the universe, but it is also a very special drop of that energy that has been placed in every single human being. That starts to awaken as it moves up the channel. It transforms itself into Shiva. What we're actually saying there is that movement and distraction have become stillness. Energy going out into every possible externality becomes internalized. Our breath becomes ultimately important. And as a result of that, our fear is stilled. Our doubt is stilled. And then as that moves up through the crown of the head, there is this beautiful depiction of Ardha Narishwara. Ardha Narishwara is Shiva and Shakti, called Parvati here. Half man, half woman, half masculine, half feminine, forever intertwined like your DNA. And when that state has been achieved, it means that you exist in absolute balance. You are a saint walking through this world. You are not capable of harm. You are harmless. Samadhi. Samadhi. Another conversation. Yes. Yes.
When it comes to what you were speaking about, does diet and nutrition have anything that plays a role in the capabilities of achieving this?
Oh yes, absolutely. Diet and nutrition have an absolute role in spiritual awakening. Because if what you are consuming into your body, food-wise, is not good for your body, then it's going to cause you suffering. And the more you suffer, whether it's through gastric distress or because you really want that apple pie and it's not available today, or because you are not mindful with your food, you haven't cultivated a relationship with it based on honor and respect for the sacrifice that has been made, then food is a distraction. And it is something that will keep us locked in a state of suffering. However, if you treat food with dignity, if you eat mindfully, if you put in your body only what nourishes it, and if you understand that even when we're talking about a salad, a sacrifice of a life has been made on one level, but you also recognize that the life energy that exists within that lettuce leaf will now become part of you. You are what you eat. Then you are taking your food and your meal plan to a different level, and it can contribute to your spiritual awakening versus become an obstacle to it. Some people say, do I have to be a vegetarian in order to be a yogi? And the answer is no, you don't. But how you eat your food matters. And if you step onto the path of yoga, onto any compassion path, whether it's yoga, Shaktism, Buddhism, any of those paths, eventually you will probably become a vegetarian. Because at some point in time, you will not be able to rectify the sacrifice that was made when there are other options available to you. But that being said, we cannot condemn the meat eater because meat is a source of abundance and it comes from the mother. And therefore, if an individual chooses to eat it, that is their personal choice, and we don't have the spiritual right to condemn them for it. We can only make our own choices in this life. And every time you point your finger at one person, the other three are pointing back at you. So, I forget who said that, but perhaps my husband remembers. Some great Swami somewhere along the line said that. And it's the truth. Every time we point out what other people aren't doing enough of or are doing too much of, what we're actually saying is, oh my gosh, that could be me. That might be me. I don't like that I'm reminded of that. So eat your food well, and eat your food appropriately, and eat your food slowly. I think if there was, one thing that I would say to people when they ask me, what can I do? I have such a busy day, such a busy life. I work so many hours and so many things going on. And I say, well then, throughout your day, simply walk slower, talk slower, breathe slower, and think slower. And as you do, you are inviting in more space, more compassion, more wellness and balance. But if you keep up the pace of a type A personality, go, 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 you will go right to the hospital. It will happen. And in yoga we say, we should live a nice long life, as long as possible, because we want to resolve as much karma in this life as possible so that we can become close to the mother and close to the father, so that we can become close to each other, so that we can resolve what we perceive to be our differences, so that we can see our unity rather than dying lost and alone. Are there any other questions right now? No? We're good?
So when you do say teachers or guides, is spiritual counseling online?
There's an interesting thing about online. You don't know who you're talking to when you're online. Yes, you can look it up. I would not suggest online counseling though. A lot of people do it. But when we engage in spiritual relationships online, what we're actually doing is avoiding someone, ourselves. We're avoiding making the investment of getting up and going somewhere, or inviting someone into our own home, or attending a kirtan, a chanting session, cultivating a personal relationship. And then all that interesting energy of the internet gets in between that also. If you needed a good book to read with regard to spiritual counseling, I would suggest first, Wayne Dyer, There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. But you can definitely look it up online and find out what it's about. But basically what it is that you meet someone who has a little bit more information than you do, and you learn from them. You know, that's all. And it's not like in the olden days in yoga where it was a guru-disciple relationship. That doesn't really exist in the US, at least not typically. It's more here, teachers that come along who can teach you something, and then you need to cultivate an awareness of that in your own life. Yeah. And I always suggest to students who come and ask that when you're looking for a spiritual teacher or a spiritual guide, just remember that you will only become as awake as the person who's teaching you. You will only become as awake as the person teaching you. So be mindful of people who have violent tendencies. Be mindful of people who are seeking to exploit. Be mindful of people who will not support you unless you pay them. Be mindful of people who you get an interesting feeling from in that regard. Begin to listen to yourself. Begin to honor yourself. Not only do we live in a time of violence, but we also live in a time of exploitation. And, you know, every decision that we make on our path is part of our path. But if we can, through awareness, make fewer harmful decisions, that's a good thing. Yeah. Yeah. Yes?
If everybody in this room could walk away with one piece of knowledge from everything that you shared just now, what do you think the most important is?
That's a great question, because it was a lot of information. I would say that the one thing that I would hope that you would walk away from would be, get out of your mind. Stop self-pitying. Stop being consumed by what you want and start serving your community. Service, true service, without seeking even a thank you, is the fastest way to heal. Service is the fastest way to heal. Service is also the fastest way to cultivate a relationship with the mother. Because in serving others, you're serving her. Yeah. Wonderful. So let's sit up nice and tall and close the eyes. Place your right hand onto your heart, your left hand onto your right. Take a nice breath in and a nice breath out. And perhaps there was one thing that was said today that touched your heart, or perhaps there were many. Whatever it is that you carry away with you, sit with it for a little while. Have a relationship with the information. Allow yourself to become wise in understanding how it pertains to your particular life. Empower yourself. And together we'll chant one beautiful Om and one All Beings mantra. If you know the mantra, please join in. Take a nice breath in for Om. Loka samasta Sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta Sukhino bhavantu. May all beings everywhere be happy and free. May the thoughts, words, and actions of my own life contribute in some way to that happiness and to that freedom for all. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. May the Mother bless us. May the Father bless us. May we recognize that they are one and the same. May we recognize that they live inside each of us and that none of us are different from any other. May we understand our unity, and may we understand the depth of our compassion, and may we walk together hand in hand through this world and through this life with the ultimate goal of complete healing for all beings everywhere. Thank you all so much for being here. Namaste. Thank you. Eye contact with everybody is absolutely so very important. Do you know why? Because the eyes are where the soul resides. Wonderful. Thank you. Enjoy the day.